Arrived at Pop's house. His wife welcomed me in with open arms. They had a room waiting for me. It was a nice setup. That house was anointed. Mama Jean is a praying, anointed woman of God. It was great to be in her company. I even accompanied her and Pops to their church. They were Adventists and went to church on Saturday. It was a new experience, and I enjoyed it. I was still trying to shake my breakup. I had failed relationships before, but this was different. I was in Cleveland for 2 months before I met Anthony. I enjoyed his company. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about my previous relationship. We connected online first. Once we met in person, we were together almost every day. I called Anthony one day to tell him that I would pick him up from work. Before I hung up the phone, he said, "Okay, bae. I love you." I was shocked. The only thing I could get out of my mouth was, "All right, see you in a minute." It was as if Anthony knew that his time was limited. When I was with him, he tried to give me every bit of him. We talked about everything. He easily made me feel secure with all my insecurities. Everything that I was uncomfortable about, he slowly erased. I even took my socks off in front of him. We would lay up at night and talk about everything. He shared with me how he was hurt from his childhood. He talked about how his family had accepted the fact that he was gay, but that he also felt different and distant from them. He was down because he had lost a good job at Nestle due to an accident at work. He was helping a lady move a table when it landed on someone's foot. They gave him a drug test and found weed in his system. They suspended him for a few days and then eventually let him go. That bothered him so much. I just didn't realize how much it did. A few days after the Thanksgiving holiday, Anthony and I were walking to the store. He told me that sometimes he just didn't feel like being alive. When he told me that his father had committed suicide when he was a toddler, I immediately asked him how he felt right then. Before he could give me an answer, I grabbed his hand in the middle of the parking lot, in 3 inches of snow, and began to pray. "You met the right nigga," I told him. I stood there and interceded on his behalf. He told me that he loved me because I was so spiritual. At this time, I was preparing to go back out on the road with Norman Connors. We were scheduled to do a show in Jacksonville, Florida. It was only paying about $300, but I was doing what I loved. Plus, Kimberla had moved to Jacksonville, and I was looking forward to seeing her. The Thursday before my trip, Anthony and I had the chance to spend time together. I made us a dinner of steak, potatoes, and spinach. When the food was all done and we began to eat, he looked up at me and said, "Damn, baby, you can cook too?" We ate good, smoked a nice one, and laid up all night watching movies, kissing, hugging, and what rhymes with hugging? While we hung out that night, someone came to the door and started ringing the bell. Anthony told me to ignore it, but the person kept coming back every hour. Every time I asked him to answer the door, he would say that he wasn't expecting anyone. Whoever it was, they stayed on that bell until 5 a.m. At one point, I looked out of the window and saw someone in a hoodie. I couldn't see his face, but I could see the smoke from his breath as he stood there in the cold. It was an eerie sight. I couldn't imagine why someone would be so committed that they would stay out in the cold for hours waiting for someone. Early the next morning, as I prepared to go to the airport, Anthony helped me get my things together. He was smiling and kissing all over me. He seemed so happy. As happy as I was to be with him, I was excited to be leaving that cold-ass weather. My cousin Kimberla had moved to Florida, and I couldn't wait to see her. As soon as my plane landed in Florida, I talked to Anthony. He was so worried that I wasn't coming back because he knew how bad I wanted to get back to Atlanta. Little did he know, I was actually looking forward to getting back to Cleveland to be with him. Chapter 39. Love Against Suicide and Hate. Jacksonville, Florida. When I got to Florida, I was walking around in shorts. I was happy to be out of the cold. I couldn't wait for sound check so that I could hit the stage. I was happy to see Norman and the crew. It had been a while since we'd done a gig together. I was glad to be back in my element. The show started slow, but when the crowd began to sing along, things fell right into place. It was a great show. I was happy to see Kimberla out there supporting me like she had back in the day. We did 2 shows that night. When I got back to the hotel, the first thing I did was plug my phone into the charger. When it powered up, I saw that I had missed Anthony's call at about 2 a.m. I tried to call him back, but he didn't answer. I kept trying to call him until I eventually fell asleep. I was up at 6:45 the next morning, getting ready to go to the airport to make my 9:45 flight. When I got to the airport, I found out that my flight back to Cleveland had been canceled because of the snowstorm. I hung out with Kimberla until I could find another flight out. When I got word that there was another flight that could possibly get me back to Cleveland, I went back to the airport. I wasn't at the airport an hour before I got a call from Anthony's phone, but it wasn't him. It was his brother. His voice was trembling. "My brother killed himself last night," he said. I looked at the phone to make sure that it was really Anthony's number. "My brother Anthony killed himself last night." "He hung himself," he repeated. I was at a loss for words. My heart dropped. I was in the middle of the airport, but I felt like I had been transported to another place. It was like all of the walls were closing in on me. Once I came to my senses, I called Kim. When she answered, she could tell right away that something wasn't right. "What's wrong, Danny?" she said. I asked her to come right away. I didn't know what else to do. Shock and confusion took over. I stood outside of the airport like something from the Twilight Zone. I was in a zombie-like state when Kim pulled up. Once I had a chance to gather myself, I called Anthony's best friend. When she answered the phone, she was crying hysterically. She told me that she had just seen Anthony. He had come to her job to finish his homework. She told me how much Anthony loved me and how he couldn't wait until I came back. She said that he acted as if he was fine. "I can't believe it," she said. I called Anthony's mom and talked to her. She said that she would wait for me to return before she made any plans. After I got off the phone with Anthony's mom, I went to Facebook and posted a status. "Finally feeling somebody," and they committed suicide #wow #Riptony. My page immediately blew up with messages of condolences. Some of the messages read, "Praying for her and her family, and may she rest in peace." I boarded a flight back to Ohio the same day. When I arrived in Cleveland, Pops picked me up and took me to Anthony's family home. When I saw Anthony's mom and the rest of his family, reality really set in. His family talked about how much Anthony and I looked alike. They also told me how much they had heard about me. Whenever I was introduced, it was as the person that Anthony was dating. As we sat around and talked, more details about his death were revealed. It was his sister and her boyfriend that discovered Anthony's body. She said that when they walked into the apartment, it was dark and cold. The windows were cracked despite the fact that it was 30 degrees below zero outside. When they noticed how quiet it was in the house, Anthony's sister walked to his room and knocked on the door. The door to the room was hollow, but his sister could feel his weight on the door. When she pushed against it and felt the body weight at the door, she took off running and never entered the room. When her boyfriend went to the room and attempted to open the door, he could tell that something was jammed behind it. He used his shoulder to nudge the door open, and it barely moved. He forced it open as far as he could. Through the crack, he was able to squeeze through the opening to get into the room. He found Anthony hanging from the hinge of the door. He had hung himself with a necktie. He took him down as quickly as he could, but it was too late. Rigor mortis had already set in. When Anthony died, he had been going through a lot. He was feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. After losing his job, bills began to pile up. His weed guy had grown persistent and wasn't letting up. When word of Anthony's death reached the streets, his weed guy was one of the first to show up. I told the detectives about the person I had seen in the parking lot, but they saw no signs of forced entry. I was furious. I couldn't believe that Anthony, my friend, my lover, had taken his own life. From what I heard, Anthony told his mom how much he liked me. I guess that really held weight with her because she told me that Anthony never really liked anyone that much. She told me that she wanted me to help make the arrangements. Out of respect for our relationship, she said. She even asked me how I would like to be mentioned in the program. When we were ready to go into the back to see his body, so many emotions flooded my body. My eyes began to water, and my insides began to tremble. As we walked toward the door of the room where Anthony's body was being held, it was like walking down the hall to the gas chamber. It was almost like the feeling of knowing that you are going to meet your demise, and there's nothing you can do about it. When they finally saw Anthony's lifeless body, the family broke down. My eyes flooded with tears. The last time I had seen him, he was alive and well. The family left me alone to have a moment with Anthony. When I tried to walk up to look at him, I could barely walk. He didn't look the same. Anthony's skin was darkened, and his body was swollen. I looked to see if there were signs of a struggle. Even though the investigators ruled it a suicide, I still didn't want to believe that he had done this to himself. In the end, I had to come to grips that he in fact took his own life. I went back to Facebook and posted another status that read, R.I.P. Anthony. I wanted to get some financial help from my Facebook family to help with arrangements. One of the comments left on the status said, "Man, bro." Another read, "Damn, you knew 2 people that committed suicide this week?" My response to that comment was, this was the person I was dating. In the time after I made that post, I had received over 1,200 messages, comments, and likes. One of the messages read, What the fuck? If Pac was alive, he would kill your bitch ass. People began to question if my page had been hacked and if someone was trying to demean me. One message read, "What the fuck you saying? You gay?" "Nah, I'm bisexual," I replied. Over the next days, I caught a lot of flack from my family. Some of them were supportive, but others made hurtful comments. It was a hard time. I was grieving Anthony, and people were trying their best to break me down even further. On the day of the service, I was in bad shape. I had been crying all day. Pops knew about my sexuality, but Mama Jean didn't. All she knew was that I had lost a good friend. Mama Jean was supposed to go to work that day but didn't, because she said she wanted to be a support to me and go to the funeral. She wanted to make sure that I was going to be okay. I was so nervous. I really didn't want her to go. I knew this was the first time that I would be out publicly, and it was going to happen at this funeral. When we arrived at the service, the family was preparing to walk in. Mama Jean was by my side the whole time. When she walked down the aisle and up to the casket with me, she kept a tight squeeze on my arm. I was seated in the row with the family, directly behind Anthony's parents. Mama Jean sat right next to me the whole time and didn't ask any questions. When the service began, the directors asked Anthony's mom if she wanted the casket opened or closed during the service. She directed them to come ask me. When the directors came to me and asked, I was kind of confused. I looked to her for confirmation, and she gave me a nod of approval. I wanted the casket open. When I got up to speak, I shared the details of a conversation I had with Anthony. "What do you think God thinks about gay people?" he asked. My response was, John chapter 3, verse 16, "For God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish." And that's where I left it. Anthony's untimely death led me to start my nonprofit, Love Against Suicide and Hate.